It's time to look at the NFC side of things, trends, philosophies, Matt Williamson's draft ditties, notes on every team in the NFC. What are their recent draft trends? What can we learn about what they might do in 2025 on today's Peacock and Williamson?
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look at the NFL on the field and in the front office with elite breakdowns to next-level analysis and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Love and appreciate all the everydayers out there who hang out with us all the time as we roll through draft season right now, getting ready for 2025. Welcome to the new listeners as well. Please subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, and breaking down the league every day as we do here on the Locked On Podcast Network. And it's time for NFC Draft Ditties. For those folks who missed the AFC episode, which was yesterday's pod, go check that out for all the notes on the AFC teams. A quick version, Matt, draft ditties. How many years you been doing draft ditties? 10 years?
Ooh, at least. I would say probably 10 to 12 in that neighborhood. Yeah, sounds about right.
And for the Draft Digest, right?
Yes, absolutely. And I just stare at drafthistory.com until something dawns on me, you know?
I miss the days when I had the paper book draft guide. The Joel
I got one right here.
Guide.
Look, they just sent me one. You know, there we go.
Okay. I know a guy. So I got to get a draft. I need a paper product in my hands on draft day. I miss that. I haven't had that for the last few years, and I got to go find one of those.
It's funny. They sent me like a dozen of them. I kept one. I gave every year I've given my son one. He's like, what do I do with this? Yeah, I might as well just go set a fire out back with it. And I took the other 10 to the radio station and just left them there. And old men like myself picked them up and we're happy to see them, you know?
Absolutely. All right. Well, let's get into it. Draft ditties. What are the trends for the teams in the NFC? And we'll start in the East and go West as we did last time. In the alphabetical, that means it's the Dallas Cowboys who are up first here. What do you see with the trends for the Dallas Cowboys? It is a team that you can learn a lot of trends because it's been a similar decision-making group for a long time there in Dallas.
Absolutely. And when you kind of luck into a Dak or a Romo, you know, I mean, those have been the starters there lately. This is what you end up with is since taking Quincy Carter in the second round in 2001, they've picked 5 other quarterbacks. So really almost a 25-year stretch where they've only taken 5 quarterbacks. But their average draft position of those quarterbacks isn't until 148th overall, including Dak. So no draft resources at all for way over 2 decades at the quarterback position. Pretty crazy.
And look, that's not going to get any higher this year either.
Right.
Because if they draft one, which they probably won't, because they just traded for a backup quarterback too, right?
Yeah, they're probably done.
So there you go, Dallas Cowboys. Yeah, that is fascinating. You got the next team here is the New York Giants. They've been.
I have one other Dallas one here. Once in a while, I double up on them. So
I like it.
Since 2015, they've had 19 selections in the first or second round, but only 6 of them have been on offense. I mean, 13-6 in terms of top 2 round picks.
They've done a really good job with wide receivers. You've had your quarterbacks you haven't had to spend draft picks on. So, it's been on the other side of the football, which is interesting for the Dallas Cowboys.
I just did Locked On Dynasty with Marcus, who's our Cowboys guy, and he strongly thinks it's going to be Tet or Golden in the first round. So that might change too.
A running mate, a different style of maybe downfield wide receiver. I can see Tet pairing really well with CD Lamb there. They're
Dallas. Both pretty different. Yeah.
Just because Golden, I think the 4.2940 on Golden, a little misleading for what kind of player.
It's a little bit of a mirage.
He does have speed and he plays fast, but it's how he breaks off his routes is why you're drafting Golden as a first round wide receiver. For Tet, it is the downfield ability, and that would be fun on offense for Dallas Cowboys fans to have CD and Tet McMillan. I don't know where Tet's going to go.
I don't either.
He was like the guy at number 4 for a long time. Start to slide. Is he fast? Is he not? Ran 4.5 4.3, 4.48, whatever. He's a 4.5
Which
guy.
is fine.
Which is fine, really fine. And then I see him later and later and later in mock drafts. I just can't believe these wide receivers are going to fall. Like Luther Burden's too talented. Round 2, I'm not buying that stuff. And with how teams pay wide receivers, I think they're going to go high again. And teams are playing coy on those wide receivers right now. But they might all like a different guy because they are very different.
I think T. Higgins ran a 4.59. I mean, Ted McMillan and T. Higgins aren't that different.
Right. He did fall, though. T.
Yeah.
Higgins.
Oh, yeah, I know.
In a better wide receiver class. But Tet, I think, was the better prospect thought of coming out. So interesting. And by the way, T. Higgins' brother, not that dissimilar from T. Higgins himself that's in this draft. Jaden Higgins might go in a similar spot than T.
Are they brothers? I don't think they're brothers.
They're not brothers? I thought
they're not brothers. No.
Oh, someone told me they're related, and I was like, you know what? I believe it because they play exactly the same.
I should have opened the show with this, but the Beast came out today, so I'll double check the Beast. That would definitely be in there. Happy Beast Day.
Beast Day to all who celebrate. Oh, my God. You know what? And look, we're going a little long on the Dallas Cowboys. We get the New York Giants here in a second. The Beast, Dane Brugler of The Athletic, the Beast, it's worth the Athletic subscription every single year just for the Beast document. But it's going to be more valuable than ever for me just to get some verified height, weight, speed 40 times.
Arm length.
Nobody ran. And the combine was like wrong on everybody's length. And so I want to see really actually how big and how fast some of these people are. And I'm sure some NFL teams are a little frustrated with how it'll make their jobs a little bit more difficult trying to figure out where guys stack up in this year's class.
Dane's analysis is awesome and also worth his weight in gold. But the background stuff is ridiculous. He was a wrestler in 10th grade, and then he became a shot putter. I mean, like this, a crazy pass all these guys take too. It's like reading a book, like a novel.
All right. I cannot believe I was duped on Jaden Higgins. I thought that was T. Higgins' brother. I'm going to have to go.
I don't think they're related.
It made too much sense. They play the same. All right. Let's go to the New York Giants. New York Giants, could they draft the quarterback early? What is the draft trend for the New York Giants?
So I've been doing this first sentence. I've not deleted since I've been doing the draft ditties. And then I usually add a second one on there because I feel like I'm just stealing it and recycling it year after year. But since 1984, when New York selected Carl Banks 3rd overall, they have not drafted a linebacker in the first round. 1984. It's pretty crazy.
Does Abdul Carter count as a linebacker?
I hope not. Like that bugs me. Like TJ Watt's not a linebacker either.
No, that's an edge rusher. I would not consider it. And I think you're safe. 2026 drafted New York Giants since 1984, selecting Carl Banks. They have not drafted a linebacker in the first round. I think that one's going to stick.
Just sticks every year I use it.
Yeah.
And then this shows how bad they've been. They've had 9 picks in the top 12 since 2014. That's not that long ago. And that's not even including the 3rd selection this year. That'll be 13 since 2015.
Yeah, and it's why they've been through multiple regimes and why their current regime's on the hot seat even before the draft starts.
Right. So I'm going to jump right to the Eagles because I always use the same one for the Eagles too, but I had to add a little preface to it because before last year, the Eagles haven't drafted a cornerback in the first round since 2002. Lito Shepherd.
Wow. Great name, Lito Shepherd. I haven't thought of that name in a very long time. That was in the day when everybody was using paper draft guides and not quite the internet for their draft information. But they drafted one last year in the first round.
Yeah, it screwed up my trend, but they still have some really strong trends. Like the Giants, they have not drafted an off-the-ball linebacker in the first 2 rounds since 2012. That's a pretty long time. And they haven't picked a running back in the first round since 1983.
Yeah, and the running back was a really strong one, but they did end up signing a running back, which made a nice little addition to their football team. So I wonder.
And they gave money to an off-the-ball linebacker.
Right. So
well, they're putting money into those positions now.
And one of the things that happens if you don't address a position, you still need to be good there. So you're either finding good ones, and if you don't hit on those picks, it kind of goes back to the New England Patriots because they were kind of like, all right, we're going to get rid of guys a year too early. We're going to let everybody hit free agency. We're going to draft and replenish around our system, and it worked for 20 years. But then you start missing on all those draft picks. You trade down, add picks, and you start missing, and you start and your football team starts to have a hole in it. And so if you're not going to draft running backs, you got to find them somewhere. So you better hit on the later round ones. And if you start to get a little light, it's like, yeah, you know what? Maybe we could just go ahead and sign this one awesome player and see if that helps us out a little bit. And it did. And I think it's similar at linebacker for the Eagles.
And Howie Roseman is not going to use a first-round pick on running back.
Right. So, you know, I agree with it wholeheartedly. Like
sure.
Spending money on a known quantity, especially when it becomes like a year-to-year proposition, that's much better than drafting the player high, because then you can go get the positions that are hard to find that cost a lot more in free agency that sometimes don't even make it to free agency. So, yeah, Howie is pretty good for a reason.
Oh, yeah.
Washington Commanders.
This one's not great. I mean, some are stronger than others, but they've made 12 first-round picks since 2012. 3 of those 12s were on quarterbacks, including last year, Jade Diggs.
Including last year. But they found their guy and a new regime.
It looks like it, yeah.
So we're going to have to start finding some new trends, I think, for the Washington Commanders. So any Commanders fans out there, let us know if you start to see some trends here from Adam Peters and the new group of decision makers there in Washington. We're talking
Haskins
new ownership,
RG3,
too, which doesn't happen that often.
Right. Haskins was really the only miss, but it doesn't sound great.
Moving on to the Chicago Bears, the NFC North, South, and West. Next. Today's episode, Peacock Williamson, brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. NBA playoffs almost here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action right now. When you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if that first $5 bet wins. Love how FanDuel makes it so easy, whether it's picking your favorite team or diving into player props. Speaking of props, NFL draft props, one of the best ways, and I think one of the ways you can have an advantage when you're betting against the house is the NFL draft. If you follow the draft closely, if you listen to this podcast, I think that is a nice little way to bet. One of my favorite ways to bet. And I don't lose very many draft prop bets when I do bet at FanDuel every single year. And from 3-pointers to assists, of course, Major League Baseball all summer long. Even after the game tips off, you can combine live prop bets into a same game parlay for a chance to win big. So don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com or download the app and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. That is FanDuel.com. Moving on to the NFC North, draft notes, recent history, biases, philosophies. What do you got for the Chicago Bears?
They've only made 6 first-round picks since 2017. And only one of those 6 was for a defensive player. Like, you got to think, they signed Edmonds, they signed the other linebacker. I mean, like, their defense is kind of built from the outside in.
Kind of a lot of second-round D tackles, second-round, third-round defensive backs, cornerbacks.
Traded for Sweat.
I was trying to think of where those was. That's 8 drafts and 6 first-round picks. One of them went for Sweat. The other one went to. They traded up for Trubisky in 2017.
Yeah, but they still used one there.
Yeah, they used a pick there.
Didn't burn them one.
What was the other first-round pick they burned?
Khalil Mack.
Oh, Khalil Mack.
Yeah. Maybe 2 of them went there.
Yeah, it didn't quite work out great with that one. I mean, obviously the player was awesome, but the team around him wasn't.
Didn't put you over the top.
Detroit Lions.
This one's not great, but this is the first time since last year was the first time since 2017 that their first 2 selections were both defensive players. Sometimes it's okay.
The pretty balanced drafting team in Detroit right now. Even when they had those 2 firsts, 2 seconds a couple years ago, they went offense, defense in the first 2 rounds. So
yeah. They just haven't gone defense.
The Green Bay Packers.
Speaking of defense, so they took Jordan Love in 2020 in the first round. They took Jordan Morgan last year. But every one of their first-round picks since 2011, other than those 2, were on defense.
Another trend that Peter Bukowski always talks about.
Yeah.
Another trend that Peter Bukowski always talks about is generally when you are drafting for the Packers, look for that defensive lineman, look for the player who meets a certain standard of athleticism, and they're not going to draft the short arm guys. Usually Jordan Morgan is kind of one of the few in recent history where it was like, okay, Jordan Morgan, is he actually a tackle?
Yeah, it's a weird pick for them.
Or are they cool with just him being a guard, and then he does meet height, weight, speed standards for being, a guard? And so that was kind of the interesting one for them. But like he keeps talking. He's like, look, Michael Williams or Shamar Stewart. Those are the types of players you should probably be mocking to the Green Bay Packers and not like maybe underspeeded corners or the undersized players for their position.
Yeah, and it hit home more a year ago when I didn't have to include Morgan because it was like every pick's been on defense except for the quarterback. Do it for a quarterback.
Yeah.
But one thing you would think that they would be, well, I know there's also a streak of non first round wide receivers everyone's aware of, but they've made 35 picks in the last 3 years and 82 over the last 8 years. I mean, if you're averaging well over 10 picks a draft, you should just be loaded with. That's what I guess they are. They're kind of lacking stars, but they're loaded with mid-round cheap talent.
Well, I think their philosophy is phenomenal with drafting. All these second-round, day 2 wide receivers, some day 3 wide receivers. People want to be like, oh, they got to draft a first-round wide receiver. Like, I don't see it. I don't see why they would have to.
Right.
They're going with that. So I disagree with a lot of folks that are trying to force a first-round wide receiver to the Packers just because it's been so long, I guess.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't disagree.
Minnesota Vikings.
So they made 2 second-round picks in 2022. Those are the only second rounders the Vikings have made over 4 draft classes, and they currently don't own a second rounder. So they could go 5 draft classes and 4 of the 5 not picking anyone in round 2.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
And this is probably a year they need to rectify that. They only have 4 draft picks. I mean, if I'm doing a mock draft, I'm kind of looking for teams, and we start looking at quarterbacks. Maybe if the Browns and the Giants pass on Shedeur Sanders, moving up. Like for me, it's pretty easy to look at the Vikings at pick 24, get ahead of some of those other teams, and think, this is a team that could really stand to move down. So that's a partner I like to move down and maybe add some second round pick. Atlanta Falcons, moving on to the NFC South teams.
Okay, 6 of the past 7 Falcons first round picks have been on offense. Penix, Bijan, Pitts, London, etc. But since 2013, they've made 11 picks in the second round, and only one of those was used on an offensive player. So first round's always offense, second round's always defense.
That's got it. This is the year to change that, right?
It better be. I mean, everyone on the planet has them mocking an edge defender.
And actually, they're in a perfect place.
But we did last year, and they took Penix.
That's true. They can shock everybody, another wide receiver or something like that. But they're in a really good spot. They could have the first defensive player last year. They went with Penix. It looks like it might have been a good move for them. It was a shocker for sure at the time. But they're in a really good spot. There should be a good defensive lineman, pass rusher that they can draft in the middle of the first round that also has value at that spot. It's finally worked out for them. Will that player be good? I don't know. I feel like it has to be Shamar Stewart, and he still doesn't collect sacks. Right?
And I think they'll ruin him. I would say if Stewart goes to the Eagles, he'll be a superstar. If he goes to the Falcons, he'll never have another sack in his life.
Carolina Panthers.
For the 3rd draft in a row, Carolina's first 2 picks were on offensive players. I think that gets broken too.
Yeah, I think so. In fact, they told us they're like we're drafting defense. So that's what it's just which player, which player. And that run is interesting between 8 and where the Falcons are at 16 or 17. I think 17, right? For the Falcons?
17, yeah.
So between 8 and 17, I mean, that's going to be a run on edge defenders, and you could almost swap. I could see the same guy going at 8 as 17, but that's a run on defensive linemen, specifically probably some edge guys in that group. Next, we're going to finish up the NFC South. We've got the New Orleans Saints. We've got Tampa Bay Buccaneers draft trends, and then the NFC West to finish up the NFC side of Matt Williamson's draft ditties next. The episode brought to you by Chewy. You probably heard of Chewy. They do really have everything you need to keep your pet happy and healthy, whether you're shopping for food, treats, even pet healthcare. Chewy makes it fast, easy, and affordable. My family uses Chewy. There's a box of something coming from Chewy, and we just have one cat, and there's always great stuff that we need from Chewy for our pet. I can't imagine if you have more pets. And by the way, not just dogs and cats, they've got supplies for birds, fish, reptiles, small pets.
Larry's a fan.
Larry the Bird in the Williamson household. You might occasionally hear him chirp if he gets riled up when we're doing this podcast. Loves himself some Chewy. I'm sure there's some awesome bird treats for your pets out there. We're talking over 100,000 products, and auto ship is an awesome feature. It really saves you from running out of food. Your busy life, all of a sudden you're like, oh no, we have no food for our pet today. You don't have to worry about that with the auto ship feature from Chewy. Everything you need from Chewy right now. You can save $20 off on your first order and get free shipping by going to chewy.com or clicking on the link in the description. Save $20 on your first order with free shipping by clicking on the link in the description. Minimum purchase required. New customers only. Terms and conditions apply. See chewy.com for complete details. Okay, Matt, we're going to finish up the NFC North draft ditties, then move on to some draft trends from the NFC West in recent years. That brings us to the New Orleans Saints.
We're going to have to spend a little time on the Saints because they're obviously a weird organization.
Yes.
Their cap is always a disaster. You would think that making a lot of draft picks makes more sense for the Saints than anybody else because we can't afford to go out in the open market. We have no money, blah, blah, blah. But hang with me. There's a couple crazy trends here with them. Since 2008, they've only drafted 100 players. Like, that doesn't sound low, but that's only 5.9 draft picks per year. I mean, that's well under what they give you, let alone comp stuff, since 2008. And over the last 6 years, they've made 36 picks. I think everyone can do the math. That's 6 per year. But 11 of those 36 have been in the 6th or 7th round. So they're not making any picks, and this is the craziest. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, they really just kind of jumped the shark in the Olave and
Penning year.
Trevor Penning year. It's like, did you really need to do this and spend future assets? And like, literally, you're helping the Philadelphia Eagles win Super Bowls because of what you're doing. And it's clearly not the right strategy. It's like, so the way I would go about things has just been so off from the way that the New Orleans Saints have done things, that they're so far out there that I almost just shake my head and be like, look, the Saints are going to do Saints stuff, and they're this outlier. They're over here. Let's find out what it is and move on. I'm done trying to predict what they're going to do.
And this is the craziest thing I wrote in the whole ditty. And a lot of people are mocking Shedeur Sanders now to the Saints, or second round, maybe they'll grab Shuck or Dart or somebody like that. However, not only the first round, but they have not used a first or second round pick on a quarterback since Archie Manning, 1971. His grandson is going to come in the league next year, possibly.
Yeah, I love that one. That one's really good. And
that's the best.
The Drew Brees era was nice. You got a guy for a decade,
sure,
and you don't have to worry about things. But previously to that, there was a long time now since Drew Brees, and definitely before Drew Brees, since 1971. And that's pretty amazing. Yeah, Archie's grandson going to be in the league pretty soon. Who knows? Maybe he's the one that breaks the trend for the
Maybe he is. Maybe it's just Manning's only. Only Manning should apply for first or second round Saints jobs.
Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
So they have used a top 57 pick on a defensive player 9 years in a row. I mean, that's a little arbitrary. I mean, I picked, one of them was picked 57, of course. But we talk about these teams that make a lot of picks, or these teams that make very few picks. Tampa's right in the middle. I mean, since 2018, they've made no fewer than 6 picks, but no more than 8. And if they give you 7 to start,
Yeah. Okay. Right in there.
Right in the middle.
They might do it again.
Might do it again. Right.
A lot of mock drafts have them with one of those defensive linemen we talked about, whoever the Falcons don't draft. I mean, there's going to be a run on defensive linemen in that area of the first round of this draft.
So they always pick a defensive player high.
Arizona Cardinals. What kind of trends we seeing over there in Arizona?
Nothing too great. I mean, I like, considering where they've been whenever this coaching staff took over, I love that they made 21 draft picks over the last 2 draft classes. Just bring in as much young talent as you possibly can. And they've had 8 third-round picks over the last 3 years. So it's not all just late stuff either.
Yeah, and flex the power when you have it. And, Kyler Murray isn't elite, not one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL, but he can play at a pretty high level sometimes. And then sometimes maybe he's a little frustrating for you. But if you believe you have your quarterback, unless like someone glaringly awesome and you think, this offensive tackle that it's hard to find, this one defensive lineman that you just can't pass up on. If you don't have that for you there on the board, you should be moving down and flex the power of having a quarterback. And the Arizona Cardinals have done that.
I just remember how bad their roster was 2 years ago when they took over. There was very few NFL players.
They've needed a lot of talent, and they've coached them up too, like where the Arizona Cardinals are going.
They're
right
doing
now.
good
Another
stuff.
draft of talent, and maybe they'll be interesting here in the NFC West. Los Angeles Rams already very interesting. What kind of trends we seeing there?
Stole this one from last year, but it's still pretty noteworthy. Last year was the first time they made a selection in round 1 since taking Jared Goff first overall in 2016. I mean, that's still pretty remarkable, even though they broke the streak last year. But still, because they're so good at the comp game, and over the last 7 years, they still average 9.9 picks per draft, 10 picks per draft still over the last 7 years, despite only using a first-round pick once in that time.
And really, way to stick the landing for Les Snead and the Los Angeles Rams. You don't have a first-round pick for all this time. And on top of that, Aaron Donald retires, and you go, cool, let's go D-line. Bam, bam, round 1, round 2. Oh, we hit on him. Good.
Yeah.
We're rolling again. We're a playoff team again. It's pretty remarkable.
Throw Kobe Turner in the mix, and now we got a D-line, right?
Yep. San Francisco 49ers.
There's 2 here. One's not real exciting, but it does show how well your Niners understand the comp game. In 9 years, they've made 16 selections in the 6th round. They're always having extra late picks. And the other one is since 2013, that's 12 draft classes, their first pick has been a defensive player 9 out of 12 times.
And I think there's a good chance that happens again.
Could be again, yeah.
This year, and if it's not offensive tackle, it's going to be one of those defensive linemen, I think, at pick number 11. That's where the 49ers are. And yeah, they're another team that plays the comp game really well. It's the Niners, the Rams, and I think the Baltimore Ravens are the 3 best teams with just comp picks every single year. And the Niners have had some really high comp picks too, like not just like 4th, 6th, 7th. By the way, Brock Purdy was a comp pick, right? But they've had those. They've had coaches and executives spread around the league as well that has gotten them some comp picks in the late 3rd round. But what's funny is they've been really bad with those late 3rd round comp picks.
I know their hit rate on those are really bad.
I don't know if they've hit on one.
I don't think they have. Right. Oh, they got all these extra picks in round 3.
Yeah. They're like, oh, look, we have a Super Bowl team. Let's just draft a kicker with one of these.
Just take a kicker, right?
What are you doing, guys? Come
Backup
on.
Tight end, and right.
It's like, hey, way to play the comp game, and then way to blow it.
And his history of drafting running backs is so bad too, Yeah.
And last one here, it is the Seattle Seahawks.
This is another one. They made a lot of picks. So dating back to the 2012 draft, they've averaged 9 players per draft, which is a pretty big number, but it's really impressive considering in one of those drafts, 2021, they only made 3 draft picks. People forget about that year. That was like Eskridge and like 2 other dudes that I don't even remember. And then over the last 6 drafts, they've made 11 picks in the 4th round. I don't know that I guess they've done a good job in the comp game too, but I find it weird when teams just have clusters of 4th round picks or 6th round picks, like for San Francisco,
Yeah. And when they do have those picks, do they make the most of them? Do they hit on them?
Yeah. Does your roster reflect it? Boy,
because if you can draft a day 3 player that performs like a first rounder, well, now you're really cooking because then you can really do some things with those first round picks. But that's easier said than done, obviously.
Do the Niners have a handful of 6th round picks that are really useful right now? They've made a ton of them. I don't know off the top of my head. I know Purdy wasn't, but
Yeah, they Purdy and some guys left, but they do have a lot of those day 3 picks that they've hit on. Some of them are on their way out though too, that they haven't re-upped on new contracts. So Dre Greenlaw was a 5, and Kittle was a 5, and Hufanga was a 5, and some of them are moving on. That's saved them quite a bit. Some of these other teams that have those extra late round picks, have those guys really come up and been key contributors for their teams. Because I mean, if you can do that, you can build your team into a nightmare. And some teams have, and some teams Have not. Still a new regime trying to figure out what the Seattle Seahawks are doing. I think we're going to learn a lot about them at pick 18 in the 2025.
But their trends could be changing too.
Yeah.
I mean, the Saints are the ones that stands out to me as just bonkers.
Yeah, think of the weirdest thing you can do, then that's what the Saints are going to do. Yeah. Apologies to Saints fans. We gotta have Ross Jackson, host of Locked On Saints, on soon. Maybe he's got some better insight into decision making and what the direction is for that football team. We will have some hosts on, especially after the draft, kind of get to know the 2025 version of these teams. So hang out with us every single day. Let us know if you see some trends that we did not for your favorite teams at BD Peacock, at Williamson NFL. Drop a comment on YouTube for tomorrow's mailbag episode as well, and subscribe while you're there. Matt and I back tomorrow right here, Peacock and Williamson.